One of the most disappointing things about being a booktuber is realizing that you actually don't know how to read very well. In my last video, I said that this was grape and it's clearly written blackberry on the front. So I apologize to all of you for once again being a channel filled with lies. Hey everybody, my name is Michael Knipp and I am back once again to talk about my favorite book series, the Stormlight Archive. This is along with the hashtag StormAlong2020 read along that I'm hosting with my very good friends. Links to all relevant things related to the read-along are going to be down below. We are going to be talking about The Way of Kings, the first book in the Stormlight Archive, and there will be spoilers for only the very beginning of this book, meaning the prologue, Chapter 1, and just very brief allusions to things slightly in the future, though we are going to be keeping it completely related to the reading section that we've read so far for Stormalong. So Stormalong has a schedule, which I will link down below, and we are going to be talking about different sections in live streams, which are going to be streamed live on Christy Lewis Dostoevsky in Spaces, the host of this read-along's YouTube channel. I am so excited for that, guys. The people that are in this read-along with me, they have become very good friends to me, and I am just pumped to talk about my favorite book series with some of my favorite people on the internet. That being said, I will for sure not be spoiling anything from like further down in this book. For the most part, I'm going to be trying to theme my videos to the reading that is relevant to the schedule of the Stormlight Archive at the time of when we're reading that. Does that make sense? I don't think it's that complicated. I'm sorry. In my last video like this, I talked about the prelude to the Stormlight Archive and how there's a lot of things there you probably missed. This time I'm going to be talking about the prologue to The Way of Kings as well as chapter 1 of The Way of Kings. Now, famously, Brandon Sanderson wrote 4 beginnings to this book, so we're basically going to be talking about false start beginnings 2 and 3, and then the book kind of starts after that in chapter 2. And something that the prologue to The Way of Kings has in common with the prelude to the Stormlight Archive, which I talked about in the last video, is that there are so many subtexts and like hidden secret things for a reread in this prologue here. There's so many things that you will not be able to understand on your first read through, but they are definitely allusions to something, and you can just feel the allusions, right? As you're reading this chapter, there are so many things that are hinted at that you know that it means something, but you don't know what it means. Trust me, as someone that's rereading this series, it pays off. But I want to bring up some things that you probably should pay attention to, or things you might have missed when you were completely lost getting into this world the first time, because I definitely was. So the prologue starts off with one of the most important events in the Stormlight Archive, in the chronology, and understanding what's happening in this world. This is a very pivotal moment in the series, and in fact, it's one that we will actually get revisited on more than one occasion. We're going to get different perspectives to the way that this night rolled out as we go through the series, but this is our first glimpse at the night King 𝗀𝗄𝗯 was assassinated by the assassin in white known as 𝗀𝗃 Villano. I believe that's how you say that. So the main details that we see here are that there is an assassin who is hired by the Parshendi, who just literally hours before this assassination takes place signed a peace treaty with the people of Alethkar, aka the people that King 𝗀𝗄𝗯 rules. Even the assassin himself does not know why they would sign this peace treaty and then immediately acquire 𝗀𝗃 to do this naughty thing. But 𝗀𝗃 seems to be held under some kind of code of honor or weird strict standard of beliefs where he's not allowed to question his master, and he very much is doing a lot of things that he disagrees with. He doesn't like being an assassin. He doesn't like walking on stone. It seems to go against his religion or his culture. He doesn't like going to this society where people are using something that he considers sacred, which is stormlight being held in these spheres. He doesn't like the way that they're using it. He disagrees with everything that's going on. He regrets killing all of the people that he kills, but he does it because he's forced to do it in the way that his master has commanded. What does that mean? We're going to want to remember that That's one of the easier things. Something that is super easy to miss the first time is that as Szeth is walking through the palace, the festival, whatever you want to call it, he walks by statues of what we now know as, because we hear it through Szeth's eyes, the heralds, which are those people that we talked about in the Prelude. We also additionally get the name of one more herald, one whose statue is missing from this collection that's inside this palace. The passage that we're talking about says, Szeth brushed by, continuing past a line of statues depicting the 10 heralds from ancient Vorin theology. 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 here. One was conspicuously missing. Why had Shallash's statue been removed? King 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗃𝗃 was said to be very devout in his Vorin worship, too devout by some people's standards. So here we actually see some interesting things, including some of the pieces that I may have alluded to in my last video. So we get the names 𝗀𝗃𝗃, 𝗀𝗃, 𝗀𝗃, 𝗀𝗏, and Shallash. One of the reasons that's interesting is this takes place 4,500 years after the events that the Heralds, as they're now called, chose to do the thing they did in the Prelude. See that as history has gone by, their very names are different. I believe we called him Jezrien before. It says 𝗀𝗃𝗃. 𝗀𝗏 has become 𝗀𝗃. These are things that can change over time and through different cultures. We also see that there has been an entire religion that has popped up around this, which we kind of knew from the Prelude, that these people were seen as deities. They are considered part of this religion called Vorinism. More about Vorinism to come in future videos, because I really want to talk about Vorinism very badly. I realized that a video I wanted to make about Vorinism doesn't pop up until some of the later chapters, so look forward to that in the future. But the thing I wanted to point out is that those people are called the Heralds. Those are the people from the Prelude. We got one additional name, and also their names seem to have changed over time. Stepping back just a second from that, I want to point out that there are some main characters for the rest of this series, including this book, that are actually kind of introduced in this chapter by name, though it's very unlikely, if you are anything like me, that you will remember that that happened. So you may actually have been able to pay attention if you'd seen my, before you read the Stormlight Archive video, where I told you to pay attention to anyone whose last name is 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃. So here we go. I'm just going to point out that these characters were at this event for the signing of the treaty. First of all, Gavilar Kholin is the king. He gets assassinated at the end of this chapter. His brother, Dalinar Kholin, is also here, and he's drunk and basically passed out at a table, completely unable to do anything during this night. They also mentioned the king's daughter and son. The daughter, Jasnah Kholin, is strangely absent from this. Seth notices that as he walks throughout the feast hall. He also notices that his son, Elhokar, is at this feast as well, talking to some strange men. Szeth considers that none of his concern. But if you've read the rest of the reading for this week, or if you're planning on reading through the rest of the reading for this week, you've kind of been established to a lot of the main characters that we're going to see moving forward. Dalinar Kholin is a main point of view character shortly after this in the books. Jasnah Kholin is a main character who interacts with Shallan in 2 chapters in the future. Because of Gavilar's death, Elhokar has become king. He's also introduced in this chapter. These are things that are very easy to miss in your first read through because you have no context for knowing who any of these people are, but they are all present, or at least should be present, for this event. Szeth didn't know where Jasnah was. So moving forward, this is where we get to the first real major use of magic, if you want to call it that, plus we get introduced to the shard blades and kind of how they work. Recently, I had someone watch my Way of Kings video, and they were concerned that this was a fantasy book, and they didn't hear me mention magic until much further into the video. Well, the book is much quicker about getting some magic out in the forefront. This is the prologue, page 5 or 6 or something, magic happens right away. And we are introduced into Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive version of some kind of powers where Szeth is able to basically breathe in the stormlight from these objects that people are using as lanterns. We also find out that people use these as money. Stormlight is able to be stored and used as lights and money in this world. Szeth is able to basically breathe that in, and it gives him, we'll say, some significant advantages as an assassin over the guards that he's fighting. Additionally, he has access to a very powerful weapon called a shard blade. Shard blades, which don't seem to cut human flesh, but when you cut them through someone's spine, it burns out their eyes and cuts straight through the soul. Is there a lore reason for that? I don't know. Keep reading. But if it cuts through an arm, the arm goes dead. If it cuts through, a leg, the leg goes dead. It's a very weird weapon, but it also can cut through inanimate objects with extreme ease. He basically slices into like solid stone easily. In addition, he's able to summon this weapon from nowhere. He has to wait 10 heartbeats. We get that indication here. The weapon appears in his hand, and if he's attacked and drops the weapon, it disappears and he can resummon it at will. It's kind of like a lightsaber, but cooler. It's like a fantasy lightsaber, but cooler. So those are the shard blades. There's a slight reference to maybe some people are figuring out how to make more shard blades, and if that happens, the 𝗹𝗶𝘃 are going to take over the entire world. You'll probably forget that, but that kind of seems like it might have been important. It seems like there's some subtext there. But the main magic that we're introduced to here is when Szeth breathes in stormlight from these lights, he's essentially able to alter gravity for objects. He's able to touch objects and change their directional gravitational pull to another direction. He's able to do that to himself. He's able to do that to people that he touches. And there's two other ways that he uses this magic. This chapter sort of serves as an explanation for how this part of the magic system works. So he can touch an object and change its gravitational pull. He can also do that multiple times to increase gravity on something, making it heavier. He's also able to touch a surface and have it pull things away from himself. So he touches a doorway and has arrows that are shot at him get pulled away from him and hit the doorway. And then he also uses stormlight to basically bind a door together so it doesn't break as easily. So these are the three sort of ways that he uses this magic to walk in on some normal people and basically kill them all, making a big ruckus because he was told to assassinate the king and make it very apparent and obvious. And we get some awesome scenes where he's, flipping around the walls, walking on the ceiling and doing that kind of stuff, throwing boulders at people. We get to see the ways that he uses this magic, and then we get a cool sword fight as he ends up fighting 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗀𝗃𝗃, the king, in full shard plate, which is special magical armor, and he ultimately defeats him. But man, was that a sweet little battle that was full of lots of information as well about how the magic works, how the armor works, how the weapons work. So super sweaty post-workout Michael/editing Michael wants to mention that also at one point 𝗹𝗶𝘃 socks Szeth real good in the face, and it jacks him up real good, and he mentions that stormlight would heal him if given the chance and the time. That's interesting. When Szeth is kind of getting the death speech from 𝗹𝗶𝘃, it's worth noting that 𝗹𝗶𝘃 thought he would be assassinated. He mentions a name here. He actually thought someone named 𝗹𝗃𝗃 would have assassinated him, potentially Restares, Sadius. Those are names we might see. But it wasn't them, it was the Parshendi. Szeth reiterates that, and the king is completely confused by that, saying, I just made a deal with these people, why would they assassinate me? He doesn't have much time left, but he makes the dying request that Szeth pass a message on to his brother. That would be Dalinar. He says, "Tell my brother he must find the most important words a man can say," which Szeth uses his finger to write that in blood, and that's the final message that 𝗹𝗃𝘃 leaves to Dalinar, and that's the prologue to The Way of Kings. And man is it awesome, and man is there a lot going on. I tried to highlight some interesting things for you to remember going forward, or maybe things that you could have missed. But yeah, we'll jump right into part 1 and chapter 1, False Beginning number 3. And now I'm going to talk about why False Beginning number 3 is actually a very interesting choice to do from a storytelling perspective, because on one hand, it's very obvious that this is jarring. You've now entered a third person's perspective. You are really completely disoriented with time and place. You know that this is 5 years after the events of King 𝗹𝗃𝘃 was assassinated, but you don't really, you're really a fish out of water still. Additionally, if you've read the chapter, you are aware that this character dies at the end of this chapter. And so it's a very weird place to start, but I'm going to emphasize some key things here, if you didn't pick them up, why this chapter is super important. So I don't know if there's an official name for this, but there's someone on Murphy Napier's Patreon Discord who uses the term fallen paragon. And it's kind of a trope that they've talked about. This is a trope that I've seen a lot more in video games than I've seen in necessarily always books or movies or something, but that may just be my experience, which is where you get a glimpse at a character who is super incredibly powerful, and then something happens to them that changes everything and kind of forces them to start over or to become jaded or cynical. This chapter is important because Sen sees Kaladin Stormblessed, a rising squad leader in like this army, and he is like respected and loved, and he's very talented as a spearman. He's very good at combat. He's extremely honorable. He's very not concerned with the petty wars that he's constantly been fighting in. He's hoping to move his rank up to be able to fight in a war that matters, aka the war to get revenge for 𝗹𝗶𝘃𝗃𝗃𝗃's murder at the hands of the Parshendi. And we also see that Kaladin has a strong desire to protect young weak boys that are forced into battle. He like specifically spends his own money to choose to get Sen on his side for this battle. He wants to bring him into the fold of which seems like a sort of found family situation where all of these people love and respect Kaladin. He's extremely able to understand what's going on the battlefield and keep his men safe. He doesn't care about the squibbles of politics. And so right away we're led to believe that Kaladin is just this super awesome dude who's extremely talented at a lot of things. He's extremely honorable, and he knows how to protect people and keep them safe. It's really cool that we get to see all of this from a third-person perspective, so we don't necessarily know what's going on in the mind of the character, but we get to see what other people think about Kaladin, and I think that's actually a really powerful tool for what we are seeing, and especially knowing what's coming in the future. During this chapter, we find out that Kaladin's main goal for him and his soldiers is to be able to go fight in the real war that actually matters instead of fighting over land with these dumb people. And we see that that is the event that drives him to strive forward and make some bold moves in this battle. A lot of things happen at the end of this chapter that are completely confusing. Someone shows up with a shard blade and shard plate to this minor land dispute, and no one knows why. Everyone kind of dies and the scene fades to black. And that's where we will jump into the next chapter, which is the actual beginning of the book, chapter 2, where Kaladin is a slave like 8 months later. My good friend Ryan, also a co-host of Stormalong 2020, has a lot of videos where he was going through micro breakdowns of this book during his first read through. And one of the things that he mentions is he finds it really hard to connect to Kaladin because during all of these sections that are coming forward in the rest of our reading, Kaladin is extremely passive. He's extremely beat down. He just lets everything happen to him. He has no drive, no desire. And the importance of this chapter with Sen's POV is to establish that at some point in the not very distant past, Kaladin was extremely driven and honorable and like respected and powerful. And something happens to him at that battle after the events of chapter 1 that turns him into the man that he becomes in chapter 2. And that is a central mystery for a significant portion of this book. What exactly happened to turn Kaladin from the man in chapter 1 to chapter 2? This book heavily focuses on Kaladin's story with the flashbacks. There's lots of flashbacks in this book, all relating to filling in Kaladin's backstory. Additionally, he is one of the main point of view characters, so we spend a lot of time in Kaladin's head getting Kaladin's thoughts. But because this is such a large book and there's so many pages of him being pretty beat down and just checked out, I think that the importance of chapter 1, the third false beginning, is to see what Kaladin was before this happened, so that we have a desire to push through what happens and the way Kaladin is in the 8 months for the future. We have a reason to care and to wonder why and what happened to make him the way that he now is. And I think that when all the pieces are put together, it all really makes sense, and it makes Kaladin such an immensely powerful character. When you have 1,000 pages, you can develop a book in weird ways that a lot of people don't do. But I think that is the importance of the third false beginning. That is a lot of info. I feel like I've been talking a long time. I don't know how long this video actually has been. I had a lot of things that I wanted to talk about, and I think that I hit most of them, if not all of them. I hope that you are able to read the Stormlight Archives with us for Stormalong 2020. This is going to be a blast. I hope you are looking forward to the live stream, which is going to be Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Time, so 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That makes sense, I think. I'm very bad with time zones. I do know that it is 8 p.m. Central Time because that's the time that I'm going to be planning on showing up. If you want to see more Stormlight videos from me as I go through this series and the Stormalong 2020, please remember to subscribe and hit that like button. Additionally, you'll get notifications if you turn the bell to tell you to get notifications. That's how it works. Also, make sure to check out the other co-hosts of the Stormalong 2020 read-along. I'll link all of their channels down below. They are all awesome, and I vouch for all of them. They are all very enthusiastic about this as well. Once again, I want to thank everybody for watching. If you've read the Stormlight Archives before and you're hearing me talk about this, are you getting some, are you understanding what some of that may mean? Are you remembering pieces of it that you may have forgotten? If you are reading this series for the first time, I hope that these style of videos are able to refresh your memory and help you recontextualize some things as you're continuing along with the series. Additionally, I hope it helps you keep some things straight in your head, as there is just a lot going on. Or maybe you're just smarter than me. You didn't struggle the first time. That's fine too. Once again, thank you guys for watching. I love you all. Go out and have a nice day, please. Please. Just please.
No one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. Always looking out tired. Sleep. No one ever get enough. If I don't show up, I might get fired.